Hey Flower Tribe, it's Kelly, Cranberry Fields Flower Farm, and I wanted to give you a quick hydrangea tip this morning on how I water my hydrangeas. So welcome, welcome. Please let me know where you guys are viewing this from. I love to see where you guys are from, what the weather's like in your neck of the woods. So here I am in my New Jersey flower farm and secret garden, and it's going to be 95 degrees today, I think tomorrow and the next day. So I need to make sure that my hydrangeas have plenty of water, otherwise they're going to start burning up and getting super crispy. So I figured I'd let you guys know some of the steps that I take to keep them happy. So this is what my Annabelle hydrangeas look like this morning, and they're looking pretty good. I've been trying to keep up with the watering. Otherwise, a lot of these blooms wouldn't be green and white right now. They would be brown. So what I do is I come out here in the morning and I give them a really good watering at the base of the plant. So a lot of times watering, like they'll take that hose and they'll kind of sprinkle over the top. And you're not supposed to do that. And the reason why you're not supposed to do that is because if these leaves stay wet for like a long time, especially like if you do the overhead watering in the afternoon and then these leaves stay wet for like late afternoon into evening and then temperatures start to drop and these leaves didn't have a chance to dry, what happens is you start getting those fungal issues, like those really attractive brown and purple spots on the leaves. And a lot of times it's that moisture that causes that. It's not that big of a deal. A lot of Flower Tribe members have sent in questions saying, help, my hydrangeas have like these spots all over the leaves and I don't know what to do. Most of the time it doesn't really harm the host plant that you have to be really super concerned about it, unless it's like a different disease, because there are some other diseases that do look like they have spots. Your best bet, if you do have a lot of spots on your leaves, is to bring like a branch into your local garden center and see what they think. But for the most part, I find that most of my hydrangeas that have the spots on the leaves, it's just because that moisture. And listen, sometimes you can't help that moisture on the leaves because sometimes it rains at the end of the day. So listen, if it rains at like, 7 o'clock at night and the leaves are wet and then nighttime temperatures, are a little bit lower, chances are you're going to get those spots anyway. So anyway, if you can try not to do it, like additional moisture that's going to get stuck on that leaf, that would be best. And so what I do is I'll like do a morning deep root watering. I'll just take my hose. I'll make sure that I water it at the base of the plant. A lot of times people will also have drip lines. They'll set up like those drip line hoses at the base of the plant, and this way you avoid hitting all of those leaves with the water. Now if you're having like crazy high temperatures and you live in like a super hot state, you're in like Florida, Texas, sometimes I find that I might actually do an overhead watering because sometimes that watering at the base of the plant isn't enough if my hydrangeas are in full sun and it's just like back-to-back super hot days. So sometimes I will give them a sprinkling overhead, but I'll do that super early in the morning. Like I'll come out here like 7 o'clock in the morning because I want to make sure that those leaves have a chance to dry out in that hot sun. So for the most part, I don't overhead water, but I do have to say, and I know some people might be like, oh my God, you're never supposed to overhead water. Sometimes I feel like that's the only way to save some of these hydrangea heads if it's going to be like an extreme temperature week and if I'm in like an extremely hot situation. But for the most part, the rule of thumb is to do that watering at the base of the plant and make sure that you don't overhead water, because sometimes what happens is gardeners will come out here, they'll see that their hydrangeas are kind of flopping. And that's just due to something called flagging, which means the flower head got a little exhausted during the day and it just needs some cool afternoon temperatures to perk back up. But what they'll do is they'll see some of their hydrangeas, kind of looking deflated, and they'll be like, well, I watered it this morning, but it probably needs more. And what they'll do is they'll overwater it. And then what happens is the plant starts to look like it's dehydrated, because when these flower heads get too much water and the plant is almost like drowning, one of the signs that it shows you is that it starts to look floppy. So you come out here, you're like, wow, my flower head's still drooping. I'm going to give it even more water. And basically you're kind of like drowning the plant, because hydrangeas don't like to have soggy feet. So a quick fix to that problem, as to know whether or not to water it, is to just put your finger in the ground up to your second knuckle and then, kind of dig in at the base of the plant. If you pull it up and the soil feels dry, then you know that it needs some water. If you pull that finger up from that, soil and it feels moist, I would leave it alone. So that's basically just like my little watering tips for today. And if you guys want, you can throw some hydrangea questions at me. I'll try to answer them if I can. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please leave me garden questions because I base all of my YouTube videos and my podcasts on the Flower Tribe's flower questions. So I love when you guys ask me things. Let's see. Fungus issues as well. Yeah, I think mine have, oh no. Please share any tips on how to treat. Okay, so some of the fungal issues you may be able to treat by spraying the entire plant with like some baking soda and a little bit of water. I think that the actual recipe, and Google this, guys, I think it's like 1 tablespoon, I think, of baking soda to a gallon of water. But if you can, Google that to make sure, and then you just kind of like spritz the plant. But before you do that, make sure that you cut off all of those leaves that have that fungus on them. Make sure that you cut them all off and you dispose of them, you get rid of them, because what happens is as it rains and the water comes down, those fungal spores are spread by wind and they're spread by water. So if they're left on the plant, that plant's going to continue to get infected. So make sure you remove all those brown leaves first and then give it a little spritz with either like that baking soda and water. And there's some garden products out there. I think Decanol's one of them. Take a look at what your garden center recommends, and that's the best way to do it. And another way to get rid of some of your fungal issues is to make sure that your plants are spaced out, because a lot of times when they're together like really tight, there's no airflow, and that causes a lot of fungal issues. But I have to say, like, look at this row that I have of these Annabelle hydrangeas. They were spaced out, like 17 years ago they were spaced out properly, like 3 feet. But since they self-propagated so beautifully, there is literally like no space between these plants. So yeah, so I do get some fungal issues back here. But I do love the way that this hedgerow looks, because it's actually like a bit of a border, almost like a natural fence. So, but if you can do some spacing between your plants, that would be great. And if you can keep up with the weeding, that would be awesome also, because a lot of times when those weeds grow up at the base of the plant, it'll also cause some fungal issues. So that's your best bet. Okay, I saw a couple questions come in here when I was answering the other one. If you guys don't mind, if you can send them again so I can, try to answer a couple more. And I'll wait for you guys. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Stephanie. Beautiful. I appreciate that. Where are you guys coming? Where are you watching from? What's the weather like by you guys? It is so hot right now. I'm actually like drenched right now with sweat, but there's a nice breeze. So, that makes it a little bit better. And I've been trying to put a whole bunch of hydrangea tips on my TikTok channel. I think and also on my Cranberry Fields Instagram page. I'm doing like 1-minute tips in the morning. Oh, thank you. Let me see here. I'm trying to record. Oh, super helpful information. Oh, thank you so much, Sherry. I appreciate that, guys. All right, guys, you can also check out my Kelly Lehman's Flower Tribe Facebook group, because there's thousands of gardeners and they're from all over the world, and they're asking and answering loads of garden questions over there. Oh, it was 111 in Texas yesterday. Oh, that's so crazy, Stephanie. That like blows my mind. I love when you guys, I know it sounds so silly that I get like so excited about that, but it's amazing to me to think that you guys are in your gardens from like all over the world. And I love to see what the temps are like, what the weather's like. So 111 in Texas. So how are you keeping up with the watering? What are you guys doing in your neck of the woods? Do you guys overhead water on days like that? Okay, thank you so much. I'm watching from Central Alabama. Wow, you're in the 90s. Thanks for all your videos. Oh, sure, from Water, Connecticut. Can I feed my hydrangeas now in this weather? Oh, that's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up. I usually don't use a lot of fertilizers with my hydrangea, and a lot of Flower Tribe members have asked me this. I usually don't fertilize them at all, especially when they're thriving. So like next year, I'm probably not going to fertilize this row because I see they're doing so beautifully this year. Sometimes the only time that I feed my hydrangeas is when I see that they're not doing well, they're not producing flowers, they look like, they need a jolt or a revitalization, but for the most part, I leave mine alone. And the rule of thumb that I use anyway here at, my flower farm, I know there's a million different, ways to fertilize your hydrangeas, but what I do is when I do fertilize them, I like to do it in spring. I'll give them like 1 dose of kind of like that rose tone around the base of the plant in spring. And usually that's it for me. Sometimes though, if the plant is still not looking that great, I will give them another dose of fertilizer right about now. So it's July, it's like July 21st, And this is the latest I will fertilize. It's really important, guys, that you don't fertilize your hydrangeas after August because the plant needs to start getting ready for dormancy. And if you keep fertilizing your plant, at the end of summer and fall, you're kind of, coaxing it into, blooming more and producing more flowers. And the plant really needs to start getting ready to kind of go dormant for, the winter. So I would not feed it, maybe I would say this would probably be like the last week I would consider feeding it. And if it doesn't need it, if your hydrangea looks great, leave it alone. I find that a lot of hydrangeas, like peonies, thrive on neglect, besides the watering. And so if you don't, go crazy with the pruning all the time, you don't go crazy with the fertilizing, then a lot of times they do really well. And that kind of works for me here at my flower farm. So kind of leave them alone. So a couple other questions came through, but I'm not that good at multitasking. Propagating went well. Oh, that's so great, Kristen. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. So I have a boatload of propagating tips, and I see the Kristen. I'm not sure if you saw those tips, Kristen, or if you knew how to do it on your own. But congratulations! It sounds like yours are doing great. If you can tell, I've got like some pots down there at the end that I'm doing it from. And Dave's from Ontario, Canada. Prune old wood. Oh, I think your question was about pruning old wood. So here's the story. These Annabelle hydrangeas come in on new wood. So on like new growth, new wood, that means that these blooms were put in place in spring of this year. So it's not like the blooms didn't come in on that old wood. So you don't have to worry too much about pruning these back at the wrong time of year. I don't prune mine back at all. So this Annabelle hydrangea row, like 80% of it, I didn't prune back at all. The ones towards the end, I did prune back, and I did that at the end of winter or early spring this year. I just prune that back the plant to about 2 feet. But as you can tell, like these guys are so much larger, and they have a really nice network of some of that older stems from last year that are kind of holding up some of the plant. However, I've got a whole bunch of hydrangeas that are over here. Those are my endless summer, and those blooms come in on that old wood that I think Dave just mentioned. So it's really important that you also don't prune back those hydrangeas like your endless summers, your Nikos, because next year's blooms are going to start to form like the end of August and September. So I would leave those alone. So the rule of thumb is don't prune and don't fertilize like, from August 1st on in like most, states, most places. So Dave, I hope that was your tip. I think you were actually tipping us off on, not to prune back then. So thank you for that. Suki, you looked at the neglect. Yeah, leave them alone. Yeah, that's exactly, yes. So I have to say, I have like the Darwinism farm. Like unless you can really survive here on your own, I don't grow it. It's just too much work. So I grow loads of peonies, loads of sunflowers, and loads of hydrangeas and zinnias because of that fact. There's so much going on here. I have 4 kids, and there's a lot of stuff going on. We have a flower company, we have a floral business, and we're making online videos and online flower courses, and I just so many hours in the day. So hydrangeas, sunflowers, peonies, zinnias, and I've got a rose of Sharon bush back there. I don't know, I'm going to try to zoom in on it. That's been coming in for like 17 years on its own. I don't even think I water that plant. And that also self-propagates a lot. So that's another one. Should I bring in my potted hydrangeas over the winter? Oh, that's an awesome question. Yes. So if you have hydrangeas that are in pots and, it gets to like below freezing, I would definitely bring them inside like your garage or like some sort of protected area, because those plants that are in the pots don't have the protection of like the soil to insulate them when temperatures drop below freezing. So if temps are going to be super, super cold where you live, I would definitely bring them in. Make sure that, you give them like a little bit of water. I would Google this because there's a trick with the watering. I think a lot of gardeners, don't do too much water because you don't want to have that plant like soaked. You don't want it sitting and having soggy roots. So since it's not flourishing, it's kind of dormant, it doesn't need that much water. And since it's not hot, you also don't need that much water. So I would definitely bring it in like the garage or a shed or someplace that's protected, even if it's up against the house. And yeah, just don't overwater it, but it probably will need to be brought inside if you're in a place where temperatures dip below freezing. If you're in a warmer climate, you probably don't even have to worry about bringing it in. So There you go. Okay. All right, guys. Oh, you're welcome, Kristen. I appreciate that. Well, thanks, guys, for the questions. Thanks for joining me. I love my flower tribe, and please check out those online flower courses that I have on descriptions below. They also make for a great gift for the gardeners in your life. And I'll see you guys in the next video. And if you enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up and a comment, and I'll see you guys later. Have a great day, everybody.